Hello, my name's Sophie Coulthard and I recently wrote an article for CMM called Shifting Mindset, Why You Need to Think Differently About Staff Wellbeing. Now, some of the key points of that article were about understanding the wellbeing needs of your staff first, using a survey in order to gain really detailed feedback from them, and then using that information to create a wellbeing plan for the whole year. And by doing this, it will help you to build trust with your team through these wellbeing initiatives, and that in turn can have an impact on culture, recruitment, and retention. Now, in this video, I'm going to go through a little bit more detail on how to create that wellbeing plan or policy. So you might want to sit down, grab a piece of paper, grab yourself a drink, and I'm going to walk you through that now. Now, once you've got a piece of paper, I would divide it into quadrants like we've got here. And what I'm going to use is the real key aspects of wellbeing. Now, there are more if you Google them, but I'm focusing on these four: financial, physical, emotional, and social. Now, a first step that I think is a really good idea to do is literally pop this, in fact, pop 2 copies of this on a board somewhere public within your care home or care environment. Now, with the first one, what I would ask staff to do is take stickers or mark with a pen if they are struggling with any one of these areas, and just to pop an X or pop a sticker on the piece of paper in the box where they feel like they're struggling. This will give you an instant picture of kind of the key aspects of wellbeing that your staff might be not doing too well with at the moment. Now, on the next piece of paper, I would ask them to pop in anything that they believe the company is already doing to support them in this area, and also any ideas that they might have of what you could do to support them in that area. And that will really kick you off. Even if you just put it up for a day, take it down and review it, then that's going to really kick you off with some ideas, and some ideas of where to focus on. And also for yourself, think about what you might currently be doing that's supporting your staff with wellbeing. Now, some things might be really obvious, but some other things to think about is things like, do you give away any free snacks, for example? Even if it's just people being able to help themselves to a banana or a piece of fruit, is that something that you do? Do you do anything in the way of flexible shifts, which I've seen a lot of companies introduce since the pandemic? Do you give people their birthday off? Is that an automatic? I also see clients that have introduced things like paid therapy sessions for staff and employee assistance programs. Anything like that you might currently do, get it all jotted down, bring it all together on one piece of paper. Now, in the article, I also talk about a survey that you can send out, and I give some ideas of questions that will give you really detailed responses from staff, such as things like, what areas do you feel underconfident at work? Now, once you've got all those survey results back, start to review some of these answers. Now, with this question, what areas do you feel underconfident in at work? Somebody might give a work-related answer. So there might be an aspect of the job that they don't feel confident in. How can you improve on that? So start to look at these and think, well, actually, if I introduce this training during induction, that would help build people's confidence, and stop them from feeling underconfident later on down the line. If somebody says something that's a little bit more personal, maybe people feel underconfident socially. Maybe they feel a little bit shy around their teammates. Maybe they don't feel like they've been very well integrated within the team. How can you do something about that? So this may be something that you review during inductions. This may be about introducing a buddy system, something like that, to really start to take these survey results and think about what you could put in place. So look for common patterns. Where are staff struggling? Are there any really easy wins, easy ways to address this? And some of this, it might not be an action step. It might be a policy decision or a policy change that could really make a difference to staff wellbeing. Now, it's really important when you're going through all this that you write down these ideas, anything that you put in place in terms of changes. Remember to evidence that for CQC. This is showing, what you've identified and what you've done with that information. And then the other important thing is to feed this back to staff. And all of this will help to build trust, help build loyalty within your team. And again, as I've said before, this will help to impact on your overall culture and recruitment and retention. So review everything that you've got written down so far. So those quadrants, the survey results, and look at maybe where you might be able to fit more into these 4 different wellbeing areas. So on the financial side, you might not be able to increase pay, for example, but can you provide any financial education? Can you reach out to local accountants that might be prepared to provide some information on pensions, or give a talk about saving and that type of thing? Obviously, the cost of living is really key right now, and on people's minds. So how can you educate around this? If you have a team that have young families, children in school, can you organise some kind of school uniform swap shop, something that enables people to swap uniforms with each other rather than having to buy new? These are just ideas that I'm throwing out there, but it's time to get creative and think about how you might support staff. On physical well-being, this might help for you to review some of the training that you do. It might help you to review a uniform policy, for example, that could make a difference physically with your team. Now, emotional and social, I'm going to come on to sort of together. And you can see within the survey questions that I've suggested, there are some kind of social questions. But let's kind of come into the emotional well-being and put some focus there, because I believe that this can have the biggest impact across care teams. Now, through my research with care companies, I've found that there are 3 really key areas that affect staff, and they are self-esteem, self-criticism, and personal stress. And these are really 3 big areas that fit into that emotional well-being quadrant. And I'm going to take these individually. So with self-esteem and self-confidence, it's really about thinking about how you can build confidence with your staff, boost their self-esteem. And that's both in terms of their work and building their confidence in their work capability, but also just as people, just personally, being able to build their confidence in themselves. Now, you might be able to review, again, some of the training that you are doing to help build confidence. But also a really good thing that a lot of people I work with have put into practice is encouraging staff, instead of coming to the manager or coming to the team leader with a question, how do I do this? Coming to them with what they think the solution is first. Now, I think one of my clients called this tell, don't ask, or you could find a different way of putting it, but it was about a staff coming up to somebody and saying, a line manager, for example, and saying, there's an issue here and this is what I think we should do to resolve it, rather than waiting for the answer. Now, the manager or the team leader always has an opportunity to correct at that point. But what this is doing is encouraging people to problem solve, think for themselves, and build the confidence that they know the answer. This is classic coaching by the line manager, not giving the answer immediately and asking people to think, what is the answer first? Then this can really help build confidence and improve the culture within that care organisation. So all of that is really going to make an impact on confidence. The next thing to look at is self-criticism. And I would really ask you, what do you do in terms of praise within your organisation? Do you have any type of employee awards? I know a lot of companies try to avoid this because they don't want to have employee of the month, but I don't think that that's an excuse for skipping praise and celebrating successes. Something as simple as having a what went well at the end of the day. And it's really important that this is not a what went well for a client, but what went well for that member of staff. What did they do that was really good that day? Little things like this, making it a habit, encouraging staff to share with you what went well, it was tricky for me to say, before they leave at the end of the day, can again really start to shape that culture and reduce self-criticism within individuals. Someone's going to go home thinking about what they did that was great rather than what could have gone better. And finally, personal stress. Now, this is a really tricky one. People might have things going on in their own world that they don't want to bring into work, and they might not bring into work. You might be completely unaware of somebody's personal stresses. But ultimately, through our research again, we have found that people under a high amount of personal stress are at the biggest risk at work. They're at risk of making mistakes because stress affects things like their intuition, it affects their problem solving, and it affects their focus. So how can you mitigate that risk? One of my clients does something which I thought was such a great idea, is they introduced personal risk assessments. Now, this is something that is kept completely separate from their staff file. It's not held on record, and it's something that is confidential between the manager or the line manager and that member of staff. And what they do is any staff member can come to that manager or their line manager and say, I'm going through something really stressful outside of work at the moment, whether that's a breakup, whether that's a financial difficulty, whether that's a death in the family. And they're able to talk that through with their manager and kind of start to understand, okay, how long do we think this might last for? How much of a risk does that make me at work? Am I able to concentrate? Am I struggling to concentrate? How can we accommodate for that stress? And really just start to understand how that might shape a risk within the workplace. Now, by knowing that and by having those details, the staff member feels like they've got it off their chest. They feel more comfortable that they've shared this with somebody. The manager is aware of it and can make a line manager aware, we just need to support this person at this time. We need to keep a bit more of an eye on them, and having that kind of transparency, again, building loyalty, building trust within the organization, and ultimately mitigating the risk. And at any time, that personal risk assessment can be reviewed, edited, and deleted if needed. So I think that is a really good idea. Now, these are a few ideas to get you started, but there's lots of things here that you can go away and think about, discuss with your staff. And I think that's really important to share these ideas with your staff and ask them for more. The next step is to plot how you can fit them into the calendar. And a really top tip from me is to introduce new ideas slowly, or dedicate just one day a week, or just dedicate an entire week to focus on this initiative. Don't try and introduce everything at once. Roll things out, particularly habits. They need to be introduced slowly. And also consider how you might map any of these ideas and initiatives against national awareness weeks. Literally Google awareness days, and you can find different awareness days throughout the year that might fit against something that you're working on. So another top tip of mine is to not do all of this work yourself. Bring in a wellbeing team or wellbeing champions. Make this a role that people in your team can apply for or volunteer for, and really lead and get involved in all of this work. And then finally, you need to get it written up. And this is written up into a policy, something that goes into every single staff member's induction, welcome pack, something that you can share with families of your clients. And most importantly, well, maybe not most importantly, but definitely it's very important to evidence all of this as part of your CQC evidence folder, or whatever you may have where you're storing that information. And finally, it's important to understand that the more you can support the well-being of your teams, the more fully they'll be able to care for your clients or your residents. So it might seem like a lot of work up front, but get that support. Get that support from wellbeing champions within your team. Put together a plan that rolls across the entire year, so that people don't turn around in 6 months' time and say, what happened about this wellbeing initiative? Map out in the calendar when you can introduce certain initiatives, and you will be ultimately setting yourself up for success. Good luck. Finally, for more information about me and further reading, you can find the Care Leaders Handbook on Amazon. I'm the co-author of that book, and there's a big section about wellbeing towards the back of that book. The Road to Outstanding podcast, which I hosted 6 series of, is available on all podcast platforms, and you can find out lots of inspiration from care leaders and ideas from myself on that too. And please get in touch, Sophie at judgmentindex.co.uk. And don't forget to go and read that CMM article. There are some suggested survey questions already for you. So I've started the hard work. And if you have any further questions, please do reach out. Thank you and all the best.